Hey, welcome back to the Ivan Outdoors podcast. You've tickled your algorithm something fierce to end up here, or you're just subscribed. Whatever the case, welcome back. Today we have two guests. One who's going to talk to us about pooping in the outdoors. That's PACT Outdoors. And then another one, just an average jamoke from Florida, who's going to talk about battling with bitey things like gators and such. Since most of us out here in the West, or many of us probably, think that that's probably dangerous, which it is. But first, paddling news headlines. I'll elaborate more on these after the interview, so stick around for that. Also, sorry it's been a while. I know you've been waiting, holding your breath even. I've been working on several micro projects, some for sharing, some not so much. So stay tuned for that, for some more micro adventures that I'll be posting soon. All right, here's the headlines. Pay attention. Okay, new wild and scenic river legislation for Montana. On August 1st, Western Montana Congressman Ryan Zink introduced Greater Yellowstone Recreation Enhancement and Tourism Act. This legislation would designate approximately 100 miles of the Madison and Gallatin rivers and selected tributaries as part of the National Wild and Scenic River System. More on that later. Angels come with paddles. Kayakers rescue couple from a flipped car in the Payette River. Kayakers witnessed a car crash, flip into the Payette River. They immediately paddled over to rescue the people inside, pulling them out to safety. It's a good story. Talk about that in a bit. Here's one from outside of our borders. Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize signed a trilateral agreement to preserve 5.7 million hectares of Mesoamerican forest. That's pretty cool considering that Guatemala, I think until recently, didn't even recognize Belize as a country. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced plans to eliminate the Roadless Areas Conservation Rule, a bedrock safeguard that has protected nearly 60 million acres of national forest land from further extraction and roads, which would obviously increase pressure on wild game, timber, mining, etc., which I know we need, but I think there's a proper review process for that. These lands, home to the wild rivers, critical wildlife habitat, and cherished backcountry recreation areas, are now at risk of being opened up to road building and logging. You can take action to protect 58 million acres of the Whitewater watersheds, and we will link to that, and we'll more on that later. So that's enough paddling news headlines for now. Let's jump into the interview with PACT Outdoors, and we're going to talk to him about how to keep your poop in a group in the NAR. All right. All right, Jake. Well, thanks for joining me today. And I'm super stoked to hear about how you guys came up with these magical wipes.
Okay. Yeah, totally. You're specifically interested in the wipes?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of like to know, like, how did you come to this? You know, you're a co-founder, I understand.
I am, yeah.
What's been your experience in the outdoors with improper poopers?
Yeah, there's a lot to get into there. We're based in Colorado, in the Gunnison Valley, so Crested Butte, Colorado. And so, you know, our valley receives a huge influx of tourists, both in and out of state, during this concentrated period of time in the summer.
Right.
And that's true in a lot of places throughout the West and the East as well. And what we find is when we have ultra high use in these concentrated areas is that you get this really big rise in mishandled human waste. So it's not buried, toilet paper's left on the ground, it's not packed out in sensitive ecosystems that require it. And really what we started noticing was land managers were understandably responding by restricting access. So what we've done in our valley, which is not unique, is we've gotten rid of dispersed camping and converted it to site-based managed camping that either needs to be booked or is a first come first serve. We issue less permits in various backcountry recreation areas. In some cases we switch from unpermitted systems to permitted. So we have this rise, another one being timed entry systems to get into places. This is really growing in the national parks. So
Yeah, I've heard about that.
yeah, waste issues and human waste are consistently cited by the land managers when they have to make these changes as one of the top one or two or three issues for why they're imposing these regulations. And land managers don't make these decisions lightly. We support them all the way. But
Right.
our stance is mishandled poop should never be a reason that we have to reduce access. And so when we were starting this business, we're like, well, why is this happening? And one of the reasons is that the standard of practice forever basically has been a home hack. It's a Ziploc bag, a trowel, a half-used roll of TP, some combination of those items. And if you're an experienced person in the outdoors, that's great. Keep using that. That's fine. But most people who are less experienced, because we don't have as many dedicated tools or kits for it, are less likely to be thinking about it. It's less likely to be this mentally salient thing that you are remembering to bring, like a first aid kit or a cook kit or any of the other kits that we make. And so our first stop on the process was really like, well, what if we took these items and put them all together, put some interesting design thinking into them, the same thing that all great outdoor products have, and will that help to make it over time so that more people are more likely to be prepared, whether you're going out on a 5-day backpack trip or a short day hike? And so that was really where it began, and from there we started looking at ways to not just take existing items, like toilet paper was never made for the outdoors. It gets crushed, it gets wet, it's got tons of chemical additives in it, and so that was like, okay, well, maybe we can create a better alternative to this. And then for the other side of our burial kits, we use fungal mycelium. Mycelium is the root system for fungus. It branches out underground, decomposing things. And our species, when you add it to the hole with your poop, breaks poop down faster and kills bacteria like E. coli that can persist in the soil, contaminate waterways, etc. So we kind of created a new system, at least, for burying your waste, and then packaged it up in these all-in-one kits that are designed for the needs of everybody from like van lifers and RVers all the way down to like ultra runners, people who are supremely weight and space conscious. And the idea with these different kits was make sure that it meets the unique needs of these different outdoor activities and users.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I've heard that the National Forest Service is starting to really limit the dispersed camping, which to me is really heartbreaking, because that's how I grew up camping in Colorado and Wyoming. It was just, you go out on the BLM, you find a spot, or the National Forest, and for the most part it went pretty smoothly. But it seems like there's just been this explosion of improper use. And I was up at Twin Lakes a couple years ago, and I went to go pitch my tent in a dispersed area that had clearly been used quite a lot, and there was just nothing, but I was twisting my ankle stepping into cat holes that were not filled in, and it was just all over the place, and toilet paper everywhere. It was terrible. So I'm really appreciative of you guys with the actually biodegradable toilet paper, because what's the problem with toilet paper, that for people who don't know?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, there's functional limitations that are like, hey, it's in this big roll and it takes up a lot of space, and when you put it in your pack, it'll get crushed and things like that. But really, it's what we put, or what manufacturers put in toilet paper, as well as conventional wet wipes. Both of these products, essentially in our minds out of laziness, contain so many additives in them that slow the decomposition process. A researcher in Florida did a study of all the major brands of toilet paper, or most of them. I think there were 20 some brands included in this study. and almost all of them contained PFAS, or forever chemicals,
Right.
which is kind of making their way into the collective consciousness. But forever chemicals are a carbon fluoride bonded molecule, and there's 30 some different varieties. But when these get into our water streams, forever chemicals, they never break down, and they're linked to higher risks of cancer, endocrine disruption. There's all these health problems, and we wipe our butts with something that contains this chemical. We bury it in the ground and we flush it directly into our water streams.
Mm-hmm.
And conventional wet wipes are arguably even worse. You have to keep those wipes from molding in the packaging. So you put all these antimicrobial, antifungal additives in them that directly impede decomposition. And so if you bury toilet paper or conventional wet wipes, it's going to take 1 to 2+ years, depending on how they're made and some of the specifics, for them to fully break down. And that's a long time.
That's crazy. That's crazy for toilet paper.
It is crazy, and what's even crazier is that for a small company like ours, we're able to do it better. We don't have a huge amount of buying power, but if you're willing to spend a little bit more, you can make a better product. And so, we wanted to at the same time kind of address some of the functional limitations of toilet paper being bulky, and that's why we created something small and compressed that you add water to. Because when you add water to it, you don't need to prevent it from molding or doing any of those things that conventional wipes do. But then we also wanted to use materials that heavily reduced the chemical additives in the manufacturing process. And so our wipes, I'll explain it. Our wipes are like a little bottle cap. You hold them in the palm of your hand. You put a 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce of water in your hand. It soaks it up. And you have the benefits of a wet wipe, which we've surveyed tens of thousands of outdoor enthusiasts. Feeling clean is really important to a lot of folks, especially folks who maybe aren't as hardcore and haven't spent as much time in the outdoors. So people really want to feel clean, which is why they bring conventional wet wipes into the outdoors. But then the other side was we wanted to use a material that just drastically reduces these chemicals. And so our material is what's called Okotex 100 standard certified. And it means it's free of literally over 1,000 chemicals that are commonly used in textiles, from clothing to toilet paper. And so we just think it's a better solution.
Okay, I'm going to pause right here for a second and describe the tool for our listeners. If you are listening, remember you can see the visuals of this on my YouTube channel. So it's about 8.5 inches long, 1.5 inches wide. Yes, I measured it. I know men can't judge length very well. It comes apart into 2 pieces. One piece is like a sharpened piece of bamboo that's hollow, so it scoops the dirt, and it's very stabby looking. It's got a serrated edge. It's got a 6-inch mark on the back, so you know how deep you got to dig. The part that slides inside of it is plastic, and it's held together sort of with this bungee cord that you can also use to clip it to whatever you need. Inside of the plastic piece is where the toilet paper and the mycelium tablets are stored. So it's all compact, single unit. It's pretty trick.
Now, a big sticking point, which ties back to your original experience at Twin Lakes, is to pack out or bury your paper. And conventional practice or conventional wisdom and guidance is to always pack out. So super critical. It helps reduce the likelihood that it's not buried properly and all of these things. But in our research, we found that 2/3, give or take, of people, it seems like, still bury their TP with their waste, and about 1/3 pack it out.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, well, we want to design products that decompose faster anyway, whether that's somebody burying it 6 to 8 inches deep in the backcountry or if it's getting thrown in a landfill. And so what people do with their paper is a little less pertinent to us than just making products that just naturally leave the earth quicker. So that's kind of the other piece in it.
So what the expanding toilet paper that you put some drops of water on and it comes to life, what is that made out of?
Yeah, so one difference between that and toilet paper, for example, is ours gets its strength from the fact that it's woven viscose fibers. And viscose basically just refers to a combination of plant-based fibrous material that is mixed together with water to create a pulp. and then ultimately dried out. So our wipes are 100% plant-based. A lot of wet wipes on the market actually contain polyester fibers, which is plastic. So when they break down, you're leaving microplastics all over the place or putting them into the water stream. They're really simple manufacturing things that when we dove into this were like really bewildering that this stuff is going on. It was just like, how are these conventional practices? So plant-based, 100% plant-based material that is sourced from responsibly managed forests. So we have an FSC, if you're familiar with that certification.
No, what does that certification mean?
It stands for Forest Stewardship Council, and it is an organization that monitors paper-based products to ensure that they are coming from forests that are responsibly managed, which means they have, environmental, economic, and communal benefits, and versus sourcing paper material from forests that are maybe being clear cut or harvested in less responsible ways.
Okay, so it's a tree-based fiber.
That's right.
Okay. That is super interesting. Can you talk about the trowel, this cool little trowel that looks like it's all compact in one, self-contained unit? And are the mushroom caps inside there? And if I eat those mushroom tablets, will I get high?
All good questions. So we make kind of two smaller all-in-one kits for burying your poop. One's called the PACT Light, the other's called the PACT Ultra Light.
Okay.
And both kind of have an integrated storage design. Our PACT Light is built around a tubular shovel or trowel. And the reason we did this is because we have heard now from so many people about the standard trowel designs, these flat pieces of bent metal, which are super slim, super lightweight, which is a huge benefit of them, but that they cut into people's hands. They're like really painful and difficult to dig with. And we live in a mountainous environment where the soil can be very compacted and very rocky, especially when we get into dry months like this one, for example.
Yep.
And so we're like, packed wipes, packed tabs, all this great stuff is fine. But if we can get everyone digging proper cat holes and burying their waste, we've won this problem.
Yeah.
And so our whole joke was like, why not just make a shovel that's easy and comfortable to hold? So we came up with this kind of tubular design that has two grip patterns. And one is like to be held in this stabbing motion to break up the dirt, and then you reverse your grip pattern, and then you can scoop out the dirt. And it's, got little other features like a serrated edge and, a 6-inch mark on the back, so you know how deep you have to get to an appropriate depth for burying your waste.
Right.
And the idea was like, just make a shovel that's comfortable to hold. So that was kind of the first part of the kit. But then since we had this tubular shovel, we used the cavity to store all your wipes and tabs. And so in our PACT Light kit, it holds 5 to 7 bathroom trips worth of supplies. So it's really, really great if you're going out backpacking for 3, 5, even 7 days. And so minus some hand sanitizer or some soap, your whole kit is in this really small, contained baton is essentially what it looks like when it's all put together. And people just
all right, that's cool. So one of those wipe tablets, is that essentially equivalent to like one wipe?
Yes, yeah, good question. So we one of the benefits of packed wipes we think is that you end up using less paper. One, because they're wet, but like the best way to use them is each one unfolds into like a 9 by 9 inch towel, and they're fairly thick and strong because they're woven. And so if you can get like 3 passes out of a single packed wipe. So you do one wipe, fold it in half, another wipe, fold it again, and wipe again. So a lot of people will be like, I can get by with just one wipe.
Right.
At most, if you're kind of being conscious about your paper usage, it's going to take 2 wipes or 2 packed wipes. And so, you're using less paper, but they're kind of allow you to be a little more judicious. But similar in size to conventional wipes, but they vary. Conventional wipes vary a lot at this point. So.
That's very cool. I feel like a lot of people who aren't used to, or maybe don't have as much experience camping and doing their business outdoors, they tend to let it, they tend to wait until it's an emergency. And then that also creates these half-assed cat holes and sort of a haphazard situation when they're dropping the deuce. So hopefully that'll really maybe address some of this, I mean, make people a little bit more comfortable because they've got this cool little or compact kit, like you said. I really like how lightweight they are and how compact. I think that's huge because I'm always trying to figure out what can I not take, how can I slim things down.
Yeah, I agree about the last minute piece. We try to give people tips. Like one thing is if you're a morning pooper, if you tend to go after breakfast or after your coffee or whatever, dig your cat hole the night before. Go out there and dig that thing so it's ready to go at camp, and then you can kind of just show up and do your business. I think part of the last minute thing too, especially with people who are newer to the practice, is it's taboo. You're maybe backpacking with friends. It's one of those things that you maybe don't want to deal with, don't want to stop the group and bring up when you have to go. And a lot of what we do is kind of trying to take the stigma out of this practice, make it something that's comfortable for people to talk about, comfortable to ask their friends if they're prepared to do. Our original PACT kit came with this super detailed info card that explained to you step by step how to use it. It was like, we want you to be able to hand this kit to a friend who's never been outdoors, not say anything, and they can feel good about the job they did. And so there's little tips and guidances that we give to folks, but I think it isn't the same as being at home and being able to be like, oh, I gotta go, and then you're on the toilet 5 seconds later. It takes a little more sort of awareness around what's going on in your body.
Right. Hey, the audio is getting a little dicey. I debated about whether or not to even just put this out there, but I figured, you know what, I enjoyed the conversation, so why not? On or about minute 25 is when I make the transition to the next interview. Joe from Florida will be up here in a couple minutes, and then the news. So how long have you guys been around? Because I've never heard of you until just about a week ago.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we worked on this for a long time. We had the idea, I think it might have been as early as 2018. And we talked it out and talked about the various methodology and some of what we see out there, and kind of had some cool ideas, but had a good laugh about it. And we're like, yeah, who wants to start a company around human poop though?
Yeah, do you guys have lots of potty jokes at the office?
We do, but we've kind of heard them all at this point.
Right. And
so a lot of times what we're doing, but what I will tell you is I'm constantly making poop puns without even realizing I'm doing it. So that, that's just a natural thing. But we're totally desensitized to poop at this point.
Yeah.
But it was really COVID that got us working on this again. And I think that was when we were like, wait, all these newsletters and articles in the New York Times and the Guardian, and I mean major publications in addition to trail orgs and everybody else covering this issue about how bad it had gotten. We had bathrooms that were closed, huge influx of people into the outdoors, and it kind of exposed a little bit of a sort of a liability, if you will, in our systems that we use to deal with waste. And most folks don't realize this, but for a lot of the Forest Service, if after salaries and paying staff, waste management is usually the largest budget line item. And that includes everything from pump and vault toilets to cleaning them to sending teams of rangers out into the wilderness to clean up mishandled waste. It's an enormous financial burden. And that's on top of environmental issues. People are more affected by seeing mishandled waste than they are by high crowds and the areas. It has a huge detriment to people's sort of enjoyment and experience of the outdoors. So it's got all these disparate effects, and it seems silly, but it's honestly one of the biggest drivers of restrictions in public land access. And so what we've kind of started doing is when we started this business, we were like, hey, if we give people better products, better tools, they will use them for their own benefit and others. And that's the belief that the whole business is built on. We don't believe people are bad and malicious. We believe they're naive and unprepared. And so to give somebody a tool, and we prove this now, a study that we've done with academic partners, that gives somebody a tool, even if it's wag bags. So we make a PACT system, which is commonly known as a wag bag for when you haul your waste out in sensitive or high-use ecosystems. Mm-hmm. And we did this study last summer with Penn State, and leave no trace.
Okay, the audio is getting bad enough now. We're going to go ahead and transition to the other interview. Okay, we're speaking with Joe from Florida, who's going to talk to us about paddling with bitey things down in the Everglades and whatnot. So, welcome, Joe, and I'm stoked to have just a regular Jamoke from Florida to talk to you about paddling and whatnot. And the alligator thing, nobody around here knows anything about paddling with sharp things.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be kind of a cool subject.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. You're in, is it Wyoming? Did I get that?
I'm in Colorado.
Colorado, okay.
Yeah, Colorado. And let's see. I grew up here mostly in Colorado, though I lived a lot of my life in Alaska and then back to Colorado. And so I guess I've been out west pretty much my whole life. And though I did spend a year living in Fort Lauderdale when I had a job down there back in my 20s. And my only experience with an alligator was when I caught one by accident with a big lure. And that was pretty exciting.
I bet. I haven't managed to get that close just yet.
Okay. I did see some while I was paddling out in the Everglades once, but they just kind of spooked away, and they were small, so.
Right. Yeah. I grew up here in Florida. I'm North Florida, so Jacksonville is actually where I'm in. We don't get stuff like Crocs, down towards the Everglades. You actually kind of have to worry about crocodiles at that point too. So we're kind of lucky. We just get the swamp puppies up here.
All right. So what is it like paddling in Florida? Do you guys ever worry about getting attacked? There haven't been many attacks, but is that something that people are concerned about?
It's definitely a concern, right? It would be silly not to be concerned. Paddle sports are inherently kind of a dangerous sport. So every time any of us go out on the water, we're putting something at risk to begin with. So you just have to weigh that risk. It's a beautiful place and it's a little risky to be there.
Right.
Is it a risk?
Like, what do you think are some of the misconceptions about gators that people out west would have? They're bitey. We paddle inflatables a lot out here just because of the rocks. But I think a lot of people would think, I don't want to paddle an inflatable because they're going to get bitten and then they have to swim.
So I actually use an inflatable out here. I have a really good friend who has hard-bodied kayaks, and she would never go out on some of the darker water with me. On her own. She would always go out in the hard-bodied kayak instead of the inflatable paddleboard. But I don't have a kayak, so I wanted to go out and explore these places. Kind of pushed her into doing it. So even here, even in Florida, people have a lot of that same mindset. Just some plastic and some air between you and the gators is kind of scary.
Right. But they pretty much just move off, right? It's like bears. You just make a little bit of noise, and they usually just hightail it. Yeah.
That's it for the most part. I would say the biggest conception is that people think gators want to eat you. That they're, aiming for that, and they're really not. They don't see humans as a food source, so they're not aiming to eat us. They're opportunistic predators. If you put yourself way too close to its mouth, you're gonna get bitten.
Right.
So you avoid that. You try not to surprise them. You give them their distance, and they don't want anything to do with you, really.
Right. Okay. So what if you were to provoke one, like what would that look like? I mean, is that paddling, like slapping the water with a paddle? Would that provoke it, or?
That's one of the main things they look for. They're hunting for or waiting rather for something that's struggling,
Mm,
right? Something that isn't swimming well or what have you. So that slapping the water you mentioned is one of the biggest things. Um, they hunt differently on top of the water than they do under the water.
mm.
So when
How
you're
so?
on so when you're on top, they're on top of the water just with their eyes out, they're scanning the surface for that kind of splashing that we're talking about, and that's going to catch their attention. They're going to go for that. But when they're under the water, they lay there with their mouth open like this, and they just kind of shift their head back and forth, and they'll feel anything that's sort of in that area while they're doing it. And as soon as something's in that area, they just snap down. So if you're on top of the water, if they're on top of the water, the worst thing you can be doing is splashing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're stepping in water that you can't see into, then you're potentially putting your foot right in a gator's mouth.
Wow. Okay. So, do you oftentimes kind of stab the water a little bit as you wade into the creek or something, or because that is kind of spooky now that I think about it. They're just sitting under there with their mouth open.
Yep. Yep. I try not to touch the bottom, right? If you're somewhere like Crystal Springs, Silver Springs, the water's crystal clear and you can see the bottom.
Sure.
But if you're in more Blackwater stuff, which is more what I get locally in Jacksonville, then you just can't see the bottom. And if I'm trying to poke the bottom like that and there is a gator there, I don't want to poke him. It's
Right.
more if I'm in really shallow water, I'm trying to paddle really shallowly
Mm-hmm.
and not disturb the bottom because I don't know what's down there.
Okay. Hmm. So it is kind of. It does sound like it's kind of a little bit of a gamble that you might antagonize one incidentally if you were launching or getting into some shallower water.
You absolutely can. There was just this year actually one of very few fatal gator accidents in Florida. It was a woman in a canoe, I believe, with her husband,
Uh huh.
and they were in really, really shallow water. And she put her paddle into the water, or her oar rather, into the water, and that's where the gator was. He grabbed the oar, pulled her out of the boat, and by the time anybody was there to help her, she had lost her life already. So
Wow.
it's absolutely a risk. It's absolutely a
Okay.
possibility something bad could happen.
So what kind of boat were they paddling? Because you said an oar, like a rowboat.
I believe it was a canoe.
Okay, so they had a regular canoe paddle, and he grabbed the paddle, and she just held onto it, and it drug her out.
I believe that's what it was. It was. I'll see if I can find the link to the news article and
Okay.
send it over. It
Yeah.
was, a scary read for sure.
Right. Right. Wow. I would not have expected that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's rare, so it's not something that happens all the time, but it happens.
yeah, 'cause I would expect them to be more curious than anything, especially if they are in a spot where they don't see a lot of humans. Um, but yeah, I know that they're not targeting us to eat.
Mhm.
So.
And even that woman, she was recovered. She was not eaten. So,
Uh huh.
it was a fatal accident, but she was not food for the
Right.
gator.
All right, so here's the story. I found it. In a fatal incident on May 2025, 61-year-old Cynthia Dacom of Davenport, Florida, was killed by an alligator after she and her husband, David, accidentally struck the animal with their canoe in Lake Kissimmee's Tiger Creek Canal. The alligator thrashed, flipping the canoe and causing Dacoma to fall into the water. The alligator attacked and pulled her underwater. The incident was considered a defensive reaction by the alligator. The attack occurred in the same area where another woman had been bitten by an alligator in March 2025. The previous incident, 3 months prior to this fatal attack in March 2025, a 64-year-old woman in the same canal was attacked by an alligator that bit her paddle and dragged her by the elbow. She was able to get to shore and was treated for her injuries. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission state that these alligators' actions were defensive reactions to being struck by the canoe. So, self-defense. And the takeaway is, old ladies shouldn't paddle. Just kidding. Alright, so the Fish and Wildlife advises people to avoid areas with large alligators and keep pets away from the water's edge. The 2 alligators they found in this area when they were searching after these incidents, or the last incident, were almost 12 feet long. So they're getting big down there. So as a paddler, avoiding areas with large alligators could be difficult.
You mentioned them being curious, though. One of the things that can make a gator itself more dangerous is people feeding alligators. And then a lot of the times fishermen, gators will learn, hey, they're going to throw that fish back in the water, and so they'll come around them. And that becomes really dangerous because then gators associate people with food. They don't have hands to go feel things with, so if they come up and they're curious about it, they think they're going to get food from you. They're going to try with their mouth,
So, like bears.
Yep.
Yeah.
They always say a fed bear is a dead bear. And
Right.
It's kind of the same thing with gators. If they become a nuisance gator, then they're removed or exterminated.
Okay. All right. So speaking of feeding the gators, paddling with dogs. Do you have a dog?
I have 3 dogs.
Okay. Do you ever take them paddling out there? Because I have a hunting dog who I think would probably be pretty interested in a gator if he saw one.
I don't take my dogs paddling. I have 3 very small dogs,
Okay.
Dachshunds and Jack Russells. So, they're snack sized.
Right.
And they're also kind of hyper. I don't know if I could keep them on the paddleboard,
Yeah.
but I do have friends that I paddleboard with who bring their dogs along. They're well-behaved dogs. They stay calm, and really, so we talked about how they're scanning the surface, right? When they're on the top of the water like that. If you think about a person standing up on a paddleboard and their dog down in front of them, right? The gator's aware that that's a large piece of prey, right? They're not looking at the dog by itself. So, I'm not going to say it's not dangerous to take your dogs with you. It would definitely be dangerous to allow your dogs to jump in the water. But they're just as safe as you are if they're well behaved.
Okay. So my dog Huck could be. I don't know if I'd want to take him. I guess he's in the water a lot, so he's in and out, up and down, and no matter what boat I'm paddling. So
right.
Yeah, he would be food pretty quickly.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. So what about like snakes and some other stuff that you guys have down there? I mean, we only have rattlesnakes out here, and I try to at least train my dog on snakes to keep him away from it, train him to stay away from them. But as far as other bitey things down there in the swamp, what should people look out for or not?
Yeah. Snakes are a thing in Florida. They're real. I've never had a snake come up onto my paddleboard or something like that, I would say what would be more possible is if you're coming through somewhere with like bushes, and there'd be a snake in the tree, could be something you might need to worry about. Or like you mentioned earlier, coming in and out of the edge of the creek, and it's kind of just being aware of your surroundings as far as snakes go. We definitely have cottonmouths and copperheads and all kinds of stuff here that'll kill you.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's kind of again worth the risk.
Sure.
The thing that has bothered me, the bitey thing that has bothered me the most paddling in Florida is mosquitoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are ubiquitous, I guess. I mean.
Yep. They absolutely
are. But you guys do have West Nile virus down there, no?
There is West Nile virus. There was a report just this year, but it was in chickens, right? It wasn't actually a report in humans. It was a report in chickens. And there's rare cases of some other mosquito-transmitted diseases too. But you should be aware of it. I wear bug spray anyway. So
yeah, that just goes with paddling and being outside in general.
Yep.
All right, cool. I had a snake once come home with me. I was on the upper Colorado River and on my raft, and I had two snake incidents actually. The first one, I saw a snake come up and try to get on the raft, and I just kind of swooshed it away and rode away, and it was fine. It went off to the bank, but they'll see you they'll, like, when they're crossing a big river, they kind of want to get up on something in the middle of the way and take a break, I guess. So they'll go right for a boat. So that was one. But then I got home one day after driving, 150 miles, 2.5 hours back to my house or so. And I go out to my raft at night, and it's dark. There's like a street light. And I went to get something off of the top of the raft that was strapped down, and this snake goes down. Like, holy shit!
Wow.
And it was a rattler.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, scary.
That was scary. And now I had a rattler in my yard, and I don't know where it went.
Right.
So
wow.
yeah, so that was spooky, because I was like, man, that thing was riding around in the bottom of the raft.
Right.
For who knows how long.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think you got on like while you were packing up or something, or while you were actually out on the water?
Probably out on the water, because they can swim. They'll go underwater, and then they go under a raft, and they see the bail holes, and they're 3/4 of an inch. Like, they can go right up in there, and then all of a sudden they're on dry land again, as far as they're concerned. So now I do a thorough check of my raft before I take it home, or while I'm unrigging it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
I would say my scariest encounter so far was on the Silver River, and it was a gator. It wasn't a snake. It was actually two gators. We're coming around this corner, and I could see him up there. He was the biggest gator we had seen yet on this trip. And the person I was paddling with, I told him, oh, there's a gator. And then I come up a little bit further, and I said, oh, there's two. There was a smaller gator moving kind of right towards the bigger gator. And I'm 25 feet away, but in the water. And so this small gator, right as soon as I'm noticing it, I guess he gets too close to the big gator. So the big gator turned around and snapped at him. And then there was this whole big, in my mind, it felt like a million years, whole life flashed before my eyes, but it was probably only 10 seconds, but just this big commotion of the two gators. I couldn't see what they were doing underwater, but it was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
I'll bet, man. I got a friend, and I've heard of people going to like Africa and paddling the Zambezi, and that's, some big water, big class 5 rapids, and down at the bottom of the rapids in the flat sections below will be gators and hippos, and that does make me nervous, because those are crocodiles, I think, right? And they get big.
Oh yeah. And
hippos are super vicious. Coming through a rapid, I'd be swimming, so I don't know. Man.
That's what we don't really have in Florida is rapids.
Right.
We've got some fast-moving rivers, but they're pretty flat. So.
Yeah. Hi, Huckleberry. Hi, buddy.
Oh, is that the dog that would jump in the water?
Yeah, this is Huck. Hi, buddy. You want to come up? Come on. I know. All right. Yeah.
He wants to go play.
All right, beat it. Go on. All right. Go eat your food. All right, that's enough. Well, cool, man. I don't know what else to talk about except, I'd like to get down to Florida and paddle around some swamps. That does sound fun. I'd like to do like a 2 or 3 day trip out there and really get lost. Well, I don't have any other questions right now.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Um,
If you ever do make it down here to Florida, you've got me on Reddit now. You've got my email. Hit me up.
yeah, for
You I
sure. And likewise, if you ever come out to Colorado, we'll put you on some light whitewater.
There you go. I can try some rapids. That's the word I was looking for. See, I can't even think of them.
Yeah, I actually live pretty close to a gift to beginner paddlers for whitewater, the South Platte River. It's
Okay.
super mellow sections, but you can get in some class twos and class threes, or avoid them if you need to. So,
Right.
but yeah, man, for sure, hit me up and stay in touch. Thanks so much for doing a little segment on sharp things in the swamp.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. Have a good night. All right, from the headlines I read earlier, let's start with the new Wild and Scenic River legislation for Montana. Western Montana Congressman Ryan Zinke he introduced the Greater Yellowstone Recreation and Enhancement and Tourism Act. This would designate over 100 acres, nearly 100 miles of the Madison and Gatlin rivers and selected tributaries as part of the National Wild and Scenic River System, which that's huge. I think that's great protection for a lot of our rivers. American Whitewater started talking with Montanans about this 15 years ago, and they worked with a group called Montans for Healthy Rivers, American Rivers, the Gatlin, God, I can't say that, Gatlin River Task Force, and the Greater Yellowstone Coalition. Um, Lots of enthusiasm for this, so hopefully it goes through. It's just in the legislative process right now, so fingers crossed. All right, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced plans to eliminate the roadless area conservation rule. It's been a bedrock of safeguarding watersheds since 2001. It prevents roads from being built into critical wildlife areas, critical habitat, backcountry recreation areas, etc. This is sort of somewhat political, but I personally think that keeping big swaths of land intact and roadless is kind of like having money in the bank ecologically. I don't have a lot of faith in the current administration to go about it um, ethically or to do the proper environmental studies. That's really what they want to get rid of, anyways, because that's what's blocking a lot of industrial activity in our wildlands. You can take action to add your voice. Public outreach really does matter. I'll link to the action page below, or you can just go to American Whitewater. All right, moving on. All right, Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize signed a trilateral agreement to preserve 5.7 million hectares of jungle forest, Mesoamerican forest. The goal is to strengthen environmental cooperation and conservation and maintain ecological integrity to benefit approximately 7,000 species. Uh, 250 are endemic to Mexico, 200 at risk, and 50 priority species. Scheinbaum has reported the Mexican government has decided to move on to the second phase and start making this concrete. So I've never had the chance yet to hike and camp in Central American forest, but one of these days I'm looking forward to it. So I think making preserves like this is pretty important. We need to be doing more of it, and I think that hopefully it'll show that it's going to be a benefit for the economy over the long run down there. So that's us from outside our borders. Moving on. All right, some of you probably already heard about this, but paddlers, kayakers rescue a couple from a flipped car in the Payette River. So a car went off the road alongside the Payette River, flipped over, landed upside down a steep riprap embankment, and a group of paddlers. My friend happened to be paddling. Him and his girlfriend happened to be paddling with them. Um, they saw it, witnessed it, paddled over, and started pulling the two individuals out of the vehicle. Um, with a raft pulled over, loaned them I guess their table to use as a backboard to help get the one lady who was pretty injured pretty badly back up to the road. So they formed a chain of people or something like that, and yeah, kayakers saved the day. Yeah, there's a good picture here of the car upside down. Um, Pretty cool. So, I mean, it's a good group of people to crash in front of if you're going to crash in front of some people. My buddy's girlfriend, I guess, got there well before him, and by the time she got there, the people were already they were already gotten them out of the car. But she basically, she's a nurse, so she kind of took over charge of the injured from there. So that's kind of neat. Anyways, didn't even realize I was connected to it. All right, Colorado Stream Access Coalition, as well as Colorado Whitewater, American Rivers, and whole bunch of other partners are coming out with Common Waters, a film that should be out in, I think, November of this year. It'll be screening here in Denver, probably elsewhere as well. I'll eventually link to that or post about it, I'm sure. So stay tuned for that. But right now, you can protect our rivers and protect our access and sign the petition for stream access. Colorado and Wyoming have some really arcane river and stream access laws. They're not in step with the rest of the entire country, essentially. Um, in a nutshell, if you touch the stream bed going through private property, you've committed trespass. We'll have more on that in another episode. We've already covered it in other episodes. Um, but anyways, I'll link to that petition as well. It's kind of news. The movie's getting close, so I'm getting excited to see it and sign the petition. Please tell your friends. We want to have greater access to our rivers without committing trespass. We want to respect landowners' rights, but we also need to recognize that these are public right of ways, public waterways, and public waters. And it's just pettiness to say that if we step on the bottom, we have committed some sort of sin. So, anyways, more on that later. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Wherever you get your podcast, if you're listening to it, you can see it. There'll be some visuals, of course. It's on YouTube. I'd appreciate a follow or subscribe, whatever. And please support some of these organizations that will be in the description or that I will list here on the screen right now with their QR codes. They're doing great work and they need our support. They need donations. They need membership. They need to sign petitions and make the phone calls. Believe it or not, public pressure really does work. And it's organizations like these that are the boots on the ground. All right. Talk to you later. See you on the river.